Hi, welcome to EPG Pathshala Spanish. I am Rajiv Saxena and I teach Spanish in the Center of Spanish, Portuguese, Italian and Latin American Studies in the Jawaharlal Nehru University, New Delhi. We are in the paper entitled Intermediate Grammar, and in this module, which is entitled Use of the Capital Letter or the Uppercase. What is the objective of this module? In this module, we will talk about the usage of the uppercase or the capital letter in Spanish. This use is very different from that of English and will show us a different side of the Spanish grammar and its unique features. So, we are stressing on the use of the capital letter or the uppercase, the usage or the non-usage of Spanish, because it is very different from English. So, if you want to learn good Spanish grammar, you have to learn this unique feature of the use of the capital letter or the uppercase. Spanish uses significantly fewer capital letters than does English. Whenever Spanish capitalizes a word, the corresponding word in English is capitalized. But the opposite is far from truth. There are numerous instances where English capitalizes that Spanish does not. I repeat that in Spanish, the use of capital letters is significantly lesser than in English. Whenever Spanish capitalizes a word, the corresponding word in English is capitalized. But the opposite is far from true. There are numerous instances where English capitalizes that Spanish does not. What Spanish does capitalize are proper names for people, places, newspapers, and magazines. Abbreviations of personal titles such as doctor, the equivalent of the English doctor, and Señor, the equivalent of Mr. And also the first word in the titles of books, plays, movies, and similar works. So I repeat, the capitalization in Spanish are usually for proper names, people, places, newspapers, and magazines. Abbreviations of personal titles such as doctor, the equivalent of the English doctor, and Señor, the equivalent of Mr. And the first word in the titles of books, plays, movies, and similar works. So, let us look at the most common cases where English capitalizes that Spanish does not. So, let's talk about calendars. The names of the days of the week and the months of the year use lowercase letters. Hoy es martes. Today is Tuesday. México celebra su independencia el 16 de septiembre. Mexico celebrates its independence on September 16th. So, the calendar, week and months are always in lowercase. Hoy es martes, martes with small. México celebra su independencia el 16 de septiembre. Mexico celebrates its independence on September. September is small, 16. Another set where it changes is composition titles. In formal written Spanish, titles of movies, books, plays, and similar works capitalize only the first word and proper names. La Guerra de las Galaxias, Star Wars, Harry Potter y la Piedra Filosofal, Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone. So, Star Wars has star and the wars, S and W as capitals, but in Spanish, it is La Guerra de las Galaxias. Harry Potter y la Filosofía, la Piedra Filosofal has Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone. The S and the S of the Sorcerers and the Stone remains La Piedra filosofal. So it should be noted that in informal written Spanish and on book covers and movies posters, it is not unusual to see such composition titles capitalized as in English. Let us move on to personal titles. What happens when we are talking and dealing with personal titles? Introductory titles are not capitalized, although some common abbreviations of them, such as Señor for Señor, Doctor for Doctor, Don for Don, and Señorita for Señorita are Conoces a la Señora Wilson? Do you know Mrs. Wilson? Conoces a la Señora Wilson? Do you know Mrs. Wilson? La Reina Victoria fue mi abuela. Queen Victoria was my grandmother. So now you can see the soft differences that Spanish tries to get into this. Las leves matices del uso de mayúsculas. Let us talk about religions. The names of the religions and their adherents are not capitalized. Mi padre es católica. My mother is Catholic. Estudio el cristianismo. I am studying Christianity. Ordinal numbers. When an ordinal number is used after a name, it isn't capitalized. Luis XIV, Louis XIV, Carlos VIII, Charles VIII. So, I repeat, for religions, the names of religions and the adherents are not capitalized. Mi madre es católica. Católica is in small. Estudio el cristianismo. I am studying Christianity. And when an ordinal number is used after a name, for example, Louis XIV, Louis XIV, Carlos VIII, Charles III. In place names also, although the given name of rivers, lakes, mountains, and other geographical features are capitalized, the place identifier is not. No vimos el río Amazonas. We did not see the Amazon River. Vivimos cerca de la montaña Rainer. We live near the mountain Rainer. So, the name of rivers, lakes, mountains, and other geographical features are capitalized. The place identifier is not. No vimos el río Amazonas y vivimos cerca de la montaña Rainer. When we talk about nationality, we have to be very careful that although the names of countries and cities are capitalized, the words derived from them are not. So, for example, soy inglés, I'm English, prefiero los cocos puertorriqueños, I prefer the Puerto Rican coconuts, all have the minúsculas or the small case. Soy inglés, I in small, I'm English. Prefiero los cocos puertorriqueños, I prefer the Puerto Rican coconuts. Puertorriqueños is in small. Likewise, the names of languages aren't capitalized. Hablo inglés, I speak English. Quiero estudiar alemán, I want to study German. Estudiar Hindi es difícil. Studying Hindi is difficult. To Spanish speakers, English speakers are very capitalization happy. We capitalize many things in English which are left without capitals in Spanish. So, English speaking people are very capitalization happy as per Spanish speaking because many things in English are capitalized which are left without capitals in Spanish. There are some basic rules to follow to decide when to use a capital letter and when to leave the first letter lowercase. Although, maybe I should state that many rules in English capitalization do not apply in Spanish. So, firstly, keep in mind that in Spanish, you do not capitalize the names of the days of the week, the months of the year, etc. The titles of the books in English have all major words capitalized. Yet, in Spanish, it is only necessary to capitalize the first letter of the first word in the title. For example, Cien Años de Soledad in the title of Gabriel Garcia Marquez's famous Nobel Prize-winning novel 100 Years of Solitude. English speakers would capitalize everything but of. So 1 with a capital O, 100, capital H, years, capital Y, solitude, capital S. But in Spanish, if we contrast it, it should be 100 years of solitude with only the O in the capital, and in Spanish it is Cien Años de Soledad, Cien with a C capital, if it were using in English and using Spanish rules. So, I would like to reinforce the fact that when you are not to capitalize, the same rule applies to the names of paintings and other works of art. The names of religions, people, languages and race, despite being capitalized in English, are not capitalized in Spanish. So, for example, Italian in Spanish would be written as Italiano or Italiano, Italiana. Catholic in Spanish would be Católico. Names of events and places like plaza would still use the lower case letters. About pronouns. How do we do capitalization in pronouns? Capitalization of pronouns in Spanish is questionable. Pronouns being I, you, he, she, it, we, you, and they all depend upon where they go in a sentence. If they are the first word, they will be capitalized. If not, the only one that would be capitalized would be the polite form of you, and they are usted and ustedes, which is आप or आप लोग, with no regard to its place in the sentence. The informal terms for you and they, being tú and Elios and Elias, would not be capitalized anywhere except as the first word. So what do we do capitalize in Spanish? In Spanish, you do capitalize the name of people, cities, states and countries. Spain is written as España with a capital letter. San Antonio, Texas would still be capitalized in Spain as it is the proper name of a city. You also capitalize acronyms. So, for example, the United States of America in Spanish, instead of being shortened to US, is abbreviated to AAUU, Los Estados Unidos. The US, the United States, in Spanish is AAUU, Los AAUU, which is the United States, the Estados Unidos. The names of institutions will have all words capitalized in both English and Spanish. UNAM or Universidad Autónoma de México, the Autonomous University of Mexico, uses capitalization too. Universidad Complutense, of course, is also the Complutense University. The first word of a sentence would use uppercase. Yet, when in doubt, when writing in Spanish, your best guess would be to use lowercase letters. Using punctuation in Spanish is mostly the same as English with a few significant differences. Periods, called punto or punto final in Spanish, the period is the easiest punctuation mark. When you finish the sentence, add a period, punto, punto final. Juan Carlos es mi mejor amigo, punto. John Carlos is my best friend. The comma or comma is used in the same way in Spanish as it is in English. Some common situations where you would use a comma are lists, clauses, and parenthetical phrases. For example, necesito leche, pan y huesos. I need milk, bread, and eggs. Si estudiara japonés, viajara a Japón. If I studied Japanese, I would travel to Japan. El senador, un hombre respetado, fue elegido por un amplio margen. The senator, a respected man, was elected by a wide margin. El senador, un hombre respetado, fue elegido por un amplio margen. In many Spanish-speaking countries, periods and commas are used in the exact opposite way as they are in English when writing numbers. 3,000 personas murieron is 3,000 people died. In English, it is a comma, and in Spanish, it is a 3.3 ceros, 3,000. Recibió un 90,5 en el examen. She received a 90.5 in the exam. So it is completely opposite. 90.5 changes into 90,5 and 3,000 has a punto and 3,000 has a comma. The Spanish question mark or the signo de interrogación is very conspicuous. Like English, every question ends with a question mark. But in Spanish, questions begin with a question mark as well. And upside one down, that is, ¿Quién es el rey de España? Who is the king of Spain? ¿Quién? With an opposite inverted question mark. Interrogatorio is ¿Quién es el rey de España? Before you go about to complain about the differences, think about how much easier it is to read a sentence out loud when you know ahead of time whether it is a question or not. So, before complaining about this difference, think about the advantage that even before reading a question, you know that it is much ahead of the time that it is a question. Now, the same happens in the exclamation points. The exclamation point or the signo de exclamación works just like the question mark. An upside down or an inverted exclamation point starts the sentence and a right-hand-sided up one ends it. Que viva el rey de España! Long live the king of Spain! Que viva el rey de España! Again, it is easier to read an exclamatory sentence in Spanish because you know from the outset that you need to change the inflection of your voice. Exceptions. The initial upside down question mark or exclamation may actually come in the middle of the sentence if the first part of the sentence isn't a part of the question or exclamation. For example, Hector, ¿me pasas el azúcar? Hector, will you pass me the sugar? Hector, ¿me pasas el azúcar? So, from me pasas, you'll have the interrogation rather than from Hector, because Hector is not part of the interrogation. Entré en el concurso y yo gané el premio. I entered the contest and I won the prize. You only want to emphasize the latter part, which is I won the prize. So, only for the latter part, you're going to use the exclamation, the inverted one, yo gané el premio. In sentences where there's both a question and an exclamation, you may mix and match the punctuation. Mariana, ¿dónde estuviste ayer? Mariana, where were you yesterday? So, you can see that there are many ways to indicate that someone is talking in Spanish. The characters used depend mainly on which region you're in. In some places, you may see the double question marks, comillas, you're used to. Quiero ir a la playa, dijo Julio. I want to go to the beach, said Julio. However, you are much more likely to see angular quotes, comillas angulares in Spanish writing. Quiero ir a la playa, dijo Julio. And you may also see a simple dash, raya, used to indicate that someone is talking. Raya, quiero ir a la playa, raya, dijo Julio. To quote a book or a movie, you may use either character. Quiero ver el hombre de hierro or yo quiero ver hombre de hierro. I want to see Iron Man, entre comillas. To place a quote within a quote, start with the angular quotes and then switch to double quotes. Yo quiero ver hombre de hierro, and the yo quiero hierro has the inverted commas. I want to see Iron Man, said Julia. Please note that commas and periods fall outside the quotations in Spanish, where they typically come inside the quotes in English. Also note that the upside down exclamation point and question mark angular quotes are special characters that are not found on the typical keyboard. Typing the less than or greater than sign twice is not equivalent to the periods. Other symbols, although they are less common, the colon, dos puntos, the semicolon, punto y coma, the hyphen, guía, paréntesis, paréntesis, and the ellipsis, puntos suspensivos, are mainly used in the same way in Spanish as they are in English. Él tiene tres amigos, dos puntos, Rafael, Carlos y Ana María. He has three friends, colon, Rafael, Carlos, and Ana María. No salí, dos puntos, quería mirar más. I didn't leave, I wanted to watch more. Los problemas son socio-económicos. The problems are social-economic. Adolfo, el héroe, regresa para salvarla. Adolfo, the hero, returns to save her. Pero pensaba que, tres puntos suspensivos, but I thought that, three dots. Spanish capitalization. Let us review what we have done earlier. Spanish uses capital letters far less often than English. Let's start with the situation that you're already familiar with. Do use capital letters when starting a sentence. Me gusta hielo. Mi tío también. I like ice cream. My uncle too. Me gusta helado. Mi tío también. Voy a conducir a Canadá con Sara en su Mazda. I'm going to drive to Canada with Sarah in her Mazda. Voy a conducir a Canadá con Sara en su Mazda. With abbreviated personal titles. El señor Montero conoce a la doctora Rodríguez. Mr. Montero knows Dr. Rodríguez. El señor Montero conoce a la doctora Rodríguez. But there are many situations where a word that would be capitalized in English is not done so in Spanish. Do not use capital letters with days and months. Hoy es viernes, el 22 de mayo. Today is Friday, May 27th. With religions, él es cristiano, pero estudia el budismo. He is Christian, but he studies Buddhism. With nationalities, like soy estudiante estadounidense y Sarah es canadiense. Or, for example, I'll say I'm an American student and Sarah is Canadian. Soy estudiante estadounidense y Sarah es canadiense. Another example would be pueden hablar inglés y francés. They can speak English and French. Ella dijo que yo lo hice. She said that I did it. With personal titles. El señor Montero conoce a la doctora Rodriguez. Mr. Montero knows Dr. Rodriguez. For the titles of books, movies, etc. When writing out the titles of books and movies, capitalize only the first word and any other proper nouns. El amor en los tiempos de guerra. Love in the time of cholera. El amor en los tiempos de cólera. Los que el viento se llevó. Gone with the wind. Lo que el viento se llevó. Note that the book covers and movie posters will not necessarily follow this rule. So, book covers and movie posters do not necessarily follow this rule. Let us see some other examples. Good afternoon is buenas tardes. Good evening as a greeting is buenas noches. Hola, mi nombre es Juan. Hello, my name is John. Hola, me llamo Juan. What is your name? ¿Cómo te llamas? What is your name? ¿Cómo te llamas? Let us continue. How are you? ¿Cómo está usted? I am fine. Estoy bien. Nice to meet you. Mucho gusto. See you later. Or goodbye. Adiós. See you later. Hasta luego. And I am lost. Where is the restroom? Estoy perdido. ¿Dónde está el baño? Excuse me is con permiso or en perdóname. Please is por favor. Thank you is gracias or muchas gracias. And bless you is sorry or salud. I'm sorry is lo siento. You are welcome, it was nothing, is de nada. So, I would like to conclude that firstly by thanking you for having patience, and I would also like to insist that we have to know all this about the Spanish uppercase and capital letters. It is very important to learn this because on the basis of this we will use Spanish perfectly and we will not make mistakes that many English learners and speakers make. Please read more texts to understand these rules very well. Muchas gracias.